right, welcome to this episode of Trojan Poetry. This week I have chosen the poem, but I've actually picked two poems.
Poems.
Yeah. Mike has not seen them, but I think this one's kind of similar to last week's poem, so maybe go back and watch that one and you can think about if they're connected or not. We'll see what Mike thinks. All right, this poem is, I don't know if it has a title. It was published in Painted Bride Quarterly in 2012 by Morgan Parker, and it's just called Poem. Painted Bride Quarterly was founded in 1973, and Morgan Parker has become, there's been a lot of buzz lately about a book she wrote last year in February of 2017. It was titled, There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce.
Whoa, she's going after Queen Bee?
Laying down the gauntlet.
Man.
And I actually checked that out from my library, and I actually read through that one. But this poem I found very different, I think, from what's in that book. Okay. But that one's certainly interesting to look at, right? Because even the title, okay.
Scandal.
Yeah. And there's some good interviews about her talking about Beyonce, that she doesn't have anything against Beyonce. It's whatever, but an interesting title. All right, so here we go. This is called Poem by Morgan Parker. I know it takes 7 years for our cells to change, so I started last Thursday. The train was pregnant with stillness and groceries, so do you know what I thought? I wondered, and then I thought I would be sick with the sound of your feet against hardwood, coming to sweep up twisted spine with that thing you always say and the way you always say it. You say you'll get it right next time, thinking it's my fault, so I read some June Jordan poems. Caught you hiding in the margins, begging to be swallowed. Got off 2 stops early, nauseous, later that night. I'm so anxious, I knit 2 rows of a scarf. It's so ugly, I fall asleep. All right, I kind of read through that pretty quickly and without any punctuation.
Well, there is none. There is only one question mark, right?
Yeah.
So there's no punctuation.
Right. And so I've read it numerous times, and I've kind of picked it apart different ways, the punctuation.
Okay. Okay. I mean, your mind naturally tries to go to complete thoughts. So I was, even though there's no punctuation, I was trying to figure out what are these stream of consciousness thoughts? Where do they begin and end? Right from the beginning, I know it takes 7 years for our cells to change. So why is that number 7 important?
You know what that is.
What's that?
That's the idea that literally your body every 7 years is all new cells.
Oh, I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So, like,
in 7 years... all the cool kids know this,
well, right.
Of course.
In 7 years, you will not be the same, because you'll be all different cells.
Really?
Or will you? Yeah.
What? Okay, I got to look this up. So,
look it up.
Wait a minute, where do the cells, they recycle themselves?
Well, they a cell dies and then regrows.
Yeah. And where do the extra cells go?
They're excreted somehow, or they're like dead skin falling off. Your hair.
Okay, well, I never heard that. I thought maybe the number 7 was some kind of mystical thing. All right, so I started last Thursday. The train was pregnant with stillness and groceries. So do you know what I thought? That seemed like the first half of the poem. And then the rest of the poem seems to be answering that question, do you know what I thought? Right? I wondered, and then I thought I would be sick with the sound of your feet against hardwood. That twisted spine, that is a really cool image, coming to sweep up twisted spine. So it sounds like there's the you that she's addressing, and so there's this you that is trying to get her attention in different ways, and there's the you that's trying to get it right next time, and then she's blaming herself, thinking it's my fault, and then she becomes nauseous and anxious, and the scarf is too ugly. So it ends on this note where she's like beating herself up kind of over something that's happened maybe within this relationship. That's what I got on the first reading. What did you discover?
I mean, we've talked a lot about, I like poems where you read it and the language is simple, but then it's just a maze, kind of a mystery, right, of how to connect it. And I guess I began to think about the idea of growth and growing and building. So the first line, I know it takes 7 years for our cells to change, so I started last Thursday. So she kind of it's kind of humorous, right?
So from this day, in 7 years.
In 7 years, I'll start now.
Right.
I'm going to change all my cells, and in 7 years, I'll be done. But then she starts to think about that, and she has the kind of unpleasant... then it says pregnant with stillness and groceries. So, she's trying to grow a new self, And the word pregnant, right, is about growing, right? So there's another word that kind of has that idea of growing or somehow giving birth, I guess, right? And then the kind of disturbing image. I thought the twisted spine was disturbing. Like somehow she thinks of somebody who's sweeping, and she's sweeping up twisted spine with that thing you always say, and you always say it. You say you'll get it right next time, thinking it's my fault. So there's somebody accusing her, right, saying you're not doing it right. Something is your fault. You're not doing it right, and the person is sweeping them up. So the narrator, the speaker, has decided to build something, right, and is going to do something. But then she has this thought of somebody coming along and just kind of like taking out the trash.
Yeah, sweeping up the twisted spine.
Right, and I don't get that. But then, so I read some June Jordan poems. Right, and so that seems to be her way
soothing.
Right. So I looked up June Jordan. According to the Poetry Foundation website, June Jordan wrote 27 volumes of poetry, essays, libretti, and work for children. She was born in 1936 in Harlem, and they quote say she is regarded as one of the key figures in the mid-century African-American social, political, and artistic milieu. So I was like, okay, so here is a woman who, to comfort herself or to somehow ground herself or to grow, turns to this other poet, right? I read some June Jordan poems. Caught you in the margins. I don't know who you is.
Who is the you?
Is that June Jordan? Is that the person that's trying to sweep up the trash?
Yeah, I thought that was still the same you, maybe.
Right, and then she gets off 2 stops early, nauseous. So when you're pregnant, right, you might be nauseous.
Right.
Later that so then when does the sentence break, or when does the thought break? Got off 2 stops early, nauseous later that night, or is she getting off because she's nauseous?
That's what I thought. She's nauseous getting off the train.
I'm so anxious, I knit 2 rows of a scarf. So again, she's building something, right? Like at the beginning of the poem, she's going to build herself, and at the end of the poem, she's going to build a scarf, but it's so ugly, she falls asleep. Like it's this kind of depressing...
Yeah, the ending just seems like she kind of goes downwards into depression, and I can't do anything right, and that kind of a feeling. And so what I want to know is, who is this you that she's addressing, and what is going on in their relationship that causes her to feel this way?
Right.
You'll get it right next time. I just feel like they had a fight, or there was something going on, some kind of conflict between the two of them that they can't resolve.
Right, is it the you thinking it's her fault, or is she, Morgan Parker, the narrator, speaker, thinking that it's her own fault?
That's what I thought.
Right, so there's even ambiguity about who thinks whose fault it is.
Right.
But that idea of, right, I'm going to build myself, and then it all comes crashing down. Yeah. And that's how I began to make sense, by connecting the idea of growth and creating.
Yeah. So everything is okay up until the question mark, and then from there, as she starts to think ahead and think about it, she gets sucked down into this kind of
and
darkness.
Even the poetry can't help.
Yeah. And it just becomes this crazy kind of winding feel to it, as she goes through each of these thoughts.
Right.
That's
pretty
interesting.
Intense,
yeah,
right?
That's interesting. That's a cool one.
So, I thought it would be interesting to look at a poem by June Jordan. So this is like a bonus.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. So this is called To Be Continued. Here we go. To Be Continued by June Jordan. The partial mastectomy took a long time to execute and left a huge raggedy scar. Healing from that partial mastectomy took even longer and devolved into a psychological chasm 2 times the depth and breadth of the physical scar from the mastectomy that was raggedy and huge. Metastatic reactivation of the breast cancer requiring partial mastectomy that left a huge raggedy scar in the first place now pounds to pieces a wound head set 50 times more implacable and more intractable than the psychological chasm produced by the healing process that was twice as enormously damaging as the surgery, which left a huge raggedy scar. And so I go on. This one, I think it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
The trying to explain or show just how incredibly painful, physically, mentally, emotionally, the surgery was. And they said that June Jordan wrote a lot of autobiographical poetry. So I can see her trying to somehow convey, right, this is what it's like.
Yeah, this
in this
is my
situation.
recovery process, right?
Right.
And the huge raggedy just over and over again, right? She repeats that 1, 2, 3, 4 times at least that I can see here, and huge raggedy scar. I mean, that's kind of like a childlike way to describe it, but it's also just a plain, straightforward way to say it's a huge raggedy scar. And when you describe it that way, it's something that really bothers her. You know, I mean. Her physical body has been changed in a way that she couldn't control and that she doesn't like.
And just the word, just raggedy, right? I mean, it's just an unpleasant word.
Yeah.
Balanced with metastatic reactivation of the breast cancer requiring partial mastectomy. So we've got that very scientific diction.
Right.
Immediately juxtaposed with huge raggedy scar. Just so visceral.
Yeah,
right?
well,
That's why visceral.
Yes.
I think, you know.
Yeah, and that seems to me to be the turn in the poem, because this seems to be the diagnosis, or the news that the doctor gave her, and she's saying, well, here's what they told me they were going to do, and now here's what's left afterwards. And she kept talking about the psychological chasm that she mentions,
which isn't as big as right. I mean, she keeps compounding.
It was twice as enormously damaging.
Right.
Right.
A wound head's at 50 times more implacable and more intractable than the psychological. Right. It's like she keeps upping
the ante.
Just how terrible it is. And then the line break, right? That left a huge raggedy scar in the first place. Now pounds 2 pieces. A wound heads at, right, like that emphasis on 2 pieces.
And at the end too, and so I go, and then the fact that the on is its own line just feels so like, I don't, helpless or
is it empowering? Like,
and so I go on. I'm going to keep going.
Right. This is how horrifying it is, but I'm going to keep going on. Right. Like, is it? Because if you just left and so I go, that's grim, right?
Where?
But then the on. I don't know.
She's
so
gonna carry on,
I was glad I looked her up. A lot of her other poems that you can find online are much more political. But I thought this one kind of, again, tied with that sense of anxiety and depression and an attempt to rebuild, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, to control something that can't be controlled, or fix something that you can't quite fix.
Right. So there you go. All right, thanks for watching. Please join the conversation in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter at Trojan Poetry DGN. Also check out our website at trojanpoetrydgn.blogspot.com.